Okay, so this is the continuation of the chart for Marilyn Monroe and whether or not her death was a murder or a suicide or accidental. We'll even just add in a special extra category. So you can see here, I have put up on the screen her natal chart. And one of the issues that I discussed, now I want to say this because it's important. I do these readings with my partner, Maha Treasure Box, and Farnoosh Abbasi is her name. And if you look on any of our information, you'll find Farnoosh Abbasi and I work together. So we discuss the charts that we do as a discipline. We usually both look at and discuss what we are seeing. Now, with this chart, although I have not actually put the chart up, and both Farnoosh and I have discussed it, or Maha's treasure box, we did discuss it because I had told her of a couple of things about the chart that I was feeling somewhat concerned by, and that I told her that I feel like to call this murder, we do need to see it also in her natal chart in order to really validate what we're seeing. And so with that, I want to say, I just want to disclose that I by myself do not just do this, that this is a joint effort on the part of my partner and I to provide the most accurate reading possible. So there's several things here that suggest in ways that there was a problem. And you can look at a couple of different aspects and see almost right away that there's really some issues. And if you look down at Saturn in the fourth house in retrograde, that is in Scorpio, where it's saying in every way that something, and we consider the cusp between the third and the fourth house, the IC, to be a portal of death. And here we have this Saturn in retrograde. Now we're going to need to look at where Mars is to make better sense of this. And you'll notice that there's a triangle or a blue line with a triangle going right up to Mars, Pluto. So the connection here and why we know something happened was there was some kind of limitation on her. What kind of limitation? Well, it was something within her home, and it was something to do with the words that she was using for all kinds of reasons. Now, one of the things that Maha and I discussed was the reality that her mental health was really struggling. And then how you are going to read death or medical and chronic medical issues in a chart is you're going to look at the first, the sixth, and the eighth house. Well, we know that in her first house, that it has to do with how she sees herself, how she survives. And you see right away, there's Neptune in the first, where how she sees herself is really, she's really not clear on who she is and how she's impacting and impacted. So a lot of emotional blindness, if you will, that she sets out on this journey to survive. But you notice that her sun, which would be in Leo, and you see in the first house you have Leo, you see it's in Gemini. What's the issue here? Well, communication, what the things she says. And given that as I pointed out before, that her mom, as it is, was schizophrenic, you have to question here whether or not Marilyn Monroe had some organic issues in this regard. And I would suspect that, yes, she did. If nothing else, you can look over at Jupiter, that is also going to be a part of the Saturn issue. And you can see it's opposing Mars now and Pluto. So Mars, Pluto together in Cancer, and then having Saturn in Cancer, it's all kind of in mutual reception. And it's saying, yeah, this here energy is going somewhere. And now, does this mean that this is murder? Not exactly yet, but it's kind of shaping up to have a more of a look of murder. And then you'll notice the Saturn opposing this energy right here, where it goes up and you can see this Taurian thing. And it's saying that right here, this is her MC and her IC. These two are in opposition. What she's meant to do versus her exit visa right here, because the IC is often really a portal of death. So Saturn in this house is suggesting that in a way it was that there was some male energy that was sharp, Scorpio, that came in and injected her with poison, and you can see it right here. So I'm pretty comfortable in saying, even in her natal chart, that I'm seeing the realities of her life and death, and that it was called in the natal chart. Now, the mental health part of it was the biggest issue. And in a way, her chart was asking her to, because you can see this first and eighth house connection where you have Neptune in Leo, and then in the eighth house, you've got Uranus in Pisces. And although this is going to be disposed of by Jupiter, because we're using a form of astrology where it's an older version, and this is in Regis Montanus, which is, I recognize that a lot of astrologers in modern society think that it's whole sign, but I want to be able to see how far into the next house is the influence and what's really the actual number lines, because it makes a big difference for how we see things. And so you can see here that her moon, it's not quite a full moon or balsamic moon, but it's heading that way, where something is coming to a fullness in this chart. Something is getting ready to express itself in a more full way. But what is it doing? It's applying to Mars in the fourth house, Saturn. It's applying to a limitation right on the IC. And whenever you see a first, sixth, and eighth house connection now to the reading, you are getting everything you need to see a chart that's about death. So with that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to pull out of this chart, and we are going to then go in and we're going to do the harmonics. And you can see, let's see, the 20. Okay, so here, and I'm going to back up actually. I'm going to go to a different harmonics chart. I am going to go to the first one in this series. Okay, so you can see we have a lunar return, eighth harmonic, and the first one I've pulled is July 12th. So the first critical day that last month, she was alive. And how we're going to look at this is we're going to say, okay, the first, the sixth, and the eighth house cusps. So the first house is going to be ruled by the moon. And where's her moon? Her moon is in the fifth house in Mars or Scorpio, or disposed of by Scorpio Mars. Okay. And the cusp is Saturn, so it's going to be Jupiter. And then the eighth house is going to be Saturn, which is in its own house. And it's in great strength because it also rules Aquarius in traditional astrology. Okay, and so you notice on the cusp of the first house right away, and we talked about this, what was getting in her way? Well, we largely believe, both Farnoosh and I, that it was the words that she used, it was her mental health. And you can see in the 12th house that she has Mercury and then up above Mars in Gemini, where she was without awareness talking. And it was really bringing the sun exposure to her and her personal life in the first house that was going to affect her survival. So the first house is going to be ruled by the moon, and we're going to want to look at where the moon again is, and that's in the fifth house, where it's in Scorpio. It's going to be disposed of by Mars. So we come back and forth between the fifth and the 12th house, where her courtship and the things that she was talking about was bringing something Neptunian in the fifth in Scorpio of a loss, a potential loss. And so right here, she was already physically starting to show signs of being in trouble. And then you look at in what way? Well, you see that Jupiter is the ruler of the sixth house, and it's in Neptune, going back to the fifth house, repeating a theme that her moon, her Neptune, and her first, her sixth, and her eighth house in some ways all interconnects to a bigger story, that she wasn't hearing, that the things she was saying were going to contribute towards her death. And oftentimes our charts offer us the opportunity, say you're a diabetic and we start seeing a lot of Venus, we know your chart is asking you to give up sugar. It's asking you to give up eating in ways that is causing your body harm. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the next chart, where we're going to look at the next month. Okay, so then you see, or not the next critical day. So it's going to be every 2.5 days. So the last one was the 12th, and now we're talking July the 15th. And you can see her first house is now Mars, actively being ruled by Mars. Her sixth house is actively being ruled by Mars, and her eighth house, Mercury. Okay, these are the planets that are coming in, and they're saying, yeah. And then you've got in the seventh house of her vitality a Mars Mercury field, because Mars is in Gemini in the seventh, which means the words that she's using are going to affect her vitality, and it's starting to drain her now. And then you can go, let's see, where in the 12th house, where we have the shadow, you can see she's got Neptune in Scorpio retrograde, where there's an opportunity to review what's happening if she's aware of her shadow. In the 12th house, we kind of view it as shadow at the end of life. And it's in Pisces in Scorpio, or not Pisces, Neptune in Scorpio. Okay, so let's just kind of look at this. So we have the in the eighth house, we have Mercury. That is going to be associated with the moon, and then it's going to be associated with Saturn, because the moon's in Capricorn. So it's starting to feel kind of cold. She's starting to feel hurt and disappointed, because she was having a relationship with not just one of the Kennedy brothers, but both of them. So there was just a lot of trouble. And then you see the outcome in the 10th house, which is going to be kind of what would be the remedy. And you could see that it would be Leo, where if she just learned to quiet down, to go backwards and stay within herself, that this was preventable. But you can see that right down here, her Saturn is approaching the IC. Her moon is approaching her Saturn. And it really, right in here, it's getting ready to take place. You can see right through here, as this moon comes closer to the Saturn, boom, there's an issue. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one. All right, and you can see here now you've got the moon has moved past Saturn, and it is now in the first. So the dispositor is now Capricorn or Saturn. Then you've got in the sixth house, Mercury is the ruler, and it is in the sixth house. Mercury in what? Cancer. So you got a first and sixth house connection here. And then we've got on the cusp of the sixth, the moon again, or the this sun in Cancer. So, and then you've got Cancer as Cancer. You have Leo as the ruler. I apologize. I get these all confused because my brain's going a little faster than my mouth. You've got Leo as the ruler of the eighth. So again, you have a first, sixth, and eighth house connection where things are starting to rapidly consolidate. And what's going to happen? Well, let's just go ahead and continue to look at the next chart, because these harmonics really tell us about her end of life, what it looked like. And you can see here where you can, in the first house, now it's going to be ruled by Jupiter in the first. She's got moon in Aries. So that's going to be ruled by Mars. The sixth house is going to be her sun right on the cusp. We're going to go back to the moon. So first and sixth house, and that her sense of herself is really caught up in these two energies, the moon and the sun, trying to, what is it? Where am I? And then you can see on the cusp of the eighth, Venus. And in the seventh is Venus in Virgo. It's about the details. Things are kind of shaping up and coming forward, and the details are starting to get kind of sharpened. And what we have Mars in Gemini in the third house of information, where we knew all along that by her talking, she was having some bringing exposure to herself in some very unkind ways. And it was just a matter of time before that information got to her. So here we go again. We're going to do July 25th. And now you see the Mars squaring Venus, the Mars squaring Pluto. Very much something's happening. Mercury would be the dispositor of the first house. And where's Mercury? Mercury is in the second house in Cancer. So we have to go back up. We look at the moon, and that is in Taurus. The ruler of the sixth now is Mars. So now we got Mars in shadow on the cusp of the first in Mercury. And in the sixth house, we have Neptune in Scorpio, which is suggesting some kind of penetrating loss. So this is moving ever so close to that whole idea in that natal chart, the actual natal chart, where you have Mars Pluto, which that right there is going to be injection of something toxic. So really pretty straightforward. And then you have in the eighth house, the ruler is going to be Saturn in Capricorn. And where is Saturn? Saturn is in the ninth house in Aquarius, operating fully in its strength. So things are really kind of coming down for her. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. And let's see, we got July 28th. And you can see now you've got Venus ruling the first. Where is Venus? So it's in Libra. Where's Venus? It's in the 12th again. Notice how this energy keeps showing up in shadow for her, where she's in this relationship with somebody, and now the details in Virgo are starting to come forward. Okay, the sixth house is ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter's in the sixth house. So there's a connection again. And then eighth house is also ruled by Venus. So you've got a first and eighth house connection. The outcome being the things that she says in the 10th house, the way she sees herself and her north node, all kind of consolidating down to a time where it's opposing in the fourth house her Saturn in Aquarius, which is going to be very strong. It is a very strong placement. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the next. And we have August 1st now. This is 4 days roughly before her death. You have, again, you're being ruled by Venus in the first, and you'll notice Saturn in Gemini, where something about her relationships, because Venus is going to be the ruler of Taurus, and it's going to be the ruler of Libra. Okay, it rules both. And in this case, this is saying Libra, her home life, that there's something because of the word she's using, Mars in Gemini, the aggressiveness that is getting ready to happen. And then you notice again that first and sixth house connection, because again, it's ruled by Venus. And you'll notice that Mars in the first, that it's in Scorpio in the sixth. So that Mars is going to be first and sixth again in Neptune. So there's a connection. And then the eighth house ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is in the 11th, where We know that it was hidden enemies that got to her. And we've got Neptune kind of reaffirming that something went on back and forth. Something was exposed that created a loss. So it's right here. It's in every way, it's right here. Okay. And then the last chart, that is the day, I think this is the day of her death. Now, she was pronounced on the 5th, but they believe that she was deceased at 11. I'm trying to remember. It was all ones. But anyway, that's in the video. I don't need to repeat it really. So here we are. So how much does this affirm what her death was? Well, let's just really unwrap this. Okay, so the first house is going to be in Capricorn, and you can see Saturn, the dispositor, is in Aquarius in retrograde. Okay, so there's a lot happening here opposing this over here, which is a little stellium in the 7th, really getting to her vital force, really start, because this is going to be about her vital force now. It's really starting to eat away at her. Something is really bothering her that day. Okay, maybe she has a bad feeling. The 6th house, the ruler is Mercury. Where is Mercury? It's in that 7th house again, about her vitality. And you can see that it's just kind of getting crushed in here, because you can see her Mercury is applying to Uranus. Something shocking, sudden, and unexpected is getting ready to happen. Okay. And how is she feeling? She's feeling kind of scared. In a way, she's feeling scared. Something's bothering her and she can't figure out what it is. The 8th house is ruled by Mercury as well. So we've got this connection again to this process. And you can see her Venus, it's about the details, Moon within a relationship. Pluto, things have just kind of taken a position to extinguish her life. And then you can see right here this connection back to the 1st house, the ascendant. Okay, so it's actually Pluto is squaring her ascendant. What is Pluto? It's going to be like poisons. So something being injected. So this is saying it in yet another way. So yes, my conclusion would be that Marilynn Monroe was injected with a lethal dose of barbiturates, thus the psychiatrist pronouncing her dead of a accidental drug overdose. There was only one thing wrong with what he said, and that was this was no accident. He killed her. So with that, please do consider like, share, and subscribe, and joining myself and my lovely co-reader Maha in getting a reading for yourself if you have medical issues. Basically, it for time immemorial, charts, the word medical chart derives from astrology. And essentially, a doctor could not provide prescriptions until he had read your chart. And unfortunately, we live in a time where some of the religiosity has decided that astrology is of an evil science. No, what it really is a science that helps us to have some locus of control in our lives with critical thinking. So with that, please do consider a reading, and like, share, and subscribe. Join myself and my co-reader. And thank you so much for joining me here on this reading today.